The story begins when the protagonist's father arranges a marriage for him with the Grand Duke Valdrova. His father firmly declares that he is certain Ferda Rosnova fully understands what that decision means. For the protagonist, hearing the news of that engagement to the Grand Duke felt like a horrifying nightmare because he was a tyrant dragon. For any noble, those words were essentially the same as receiving a death sentence, leaving only two choices. He could reject the marriage and be expelled, or accept the agreement and end up being torn apart. But deep inside, all he truly wanted was to feel like a member of that family and be accepted by them. Before all of this occurred, Ferda had attempted training. He was the third son of a knightly family, born to a concubine, and possessed a weak body. The servant noticed him training once again that day and remarked that it was pointless. He had made no progress for years. He was struggling despite having no talent. Absolutely no one supported Ferda, yet he endured all of it. He believed that if he continued trying, someday he would be recognized. Looking toward the window, he saw his father watching him with a smile. This encouraged Ferda to keep going. However, that day an incident occurred. Holding a sword in his hand, one of his brothers smugly asked, "Ferda, I heard an interesting rumor recently. Are you really beginning night training? You seem to be mistaken about something. You don't even have the right to attempt it. Not with those filthy blue eyes of yours." Ferda was left on the ground, defeated and humiliated. All Ferda ever wanted was to be accepted by the family. But when he looked toward the window, he saw that the reality was entirely different. His father simply turned around and walked away from the window, proving that he did not care about him at all. At that moment, Ferda realized that everyone there had turned their backs on him long ago. Now in the present, Ferda gathers his courage and tells his father that he has decided to leave the family. His father merely looks at him with an utterly cold expression, showing neither reaction nor affection. The man coldly agrees, and soon Ferda finds himself standing outside the mansion gates. His father had disowned him, meaning that from that moment onward, he was no longer a member of the Rosnova family. Ferda looks at his bruised hands and begins trembling with anger, remembering that his father knew perfectly well how hard he had been trying. Overcome by uncontrollable fury, his eyes shine with a frightening desire for revenge. He vows to himself that under no circumstances would he ever forgive his father for what he had done. At that moment, a mysterious red magic circle emerges around him. Reacting to all those overwhelming emotions, he promises to make his father regret casting him aside. That very day, Ferda awakened as a mage. However, because he had awakened as a mage at the age of 18, he was bullied by the other apprentices. They ridicule him while he lies on the ground, saying that he was much too old to dream of becoming a mage. They laugh and ask whether he even has enough intelligence to comprehend magic, adding that it would take him decades just to understand the fundamental principles. Ferda knows that every mage uses their inner strength as the force that drives them. Ferda ignored their remarks and muttered that he didn't care about any of it. His body began releasing a sinister aura. The boys became frightened when they realized that it was a red circle. Ferda coldly explained that he didn't care because his mana was powered by hatred and revenge. With all that dark energy accumulated within him, he unleashed a gigantic explosion on the spot. Now the bullies were lying on the ground, while Ferda realized that the more he hated someone, the greater his magical power became. Driven by revenge, he reached the sixth circle. The only place he had left to return to was his home, the Rosnova family. That was his sole target. He used his newfound powers to force the servants who had once humiliated him to destroy themselves without mercy. After that, Ferda caused his two older brothers to hate each other deeply. He watched carefully as the two battled until they completely destroyed one another on the ground. Finally, he confronts his own father, the man he despised the most, who desperately begs for mercy. Ferda tells his father to look carefully at the downfall of the proud Rosnova family that he himself had built. The man completely loses his sanity when he sees that horrifying nightmare unfold before his eyes. With that, absolutely everything associated with the Rosnova family disappeared from the world. However, even after accomplishing his revenge, it still did not seem sufficient to satisfy his heart. His hatred and fury never subsided, spreading throughout the continent. In response, several influential and powerful warriors band together with their swords to stop him at any cost. They surround him and proclaim him the greatest enemy of the entire continent, promising to bring him to justice. But he survives once again and reaches the eighth magic circle, the highest level a human can possibly attain. He brought the entire kingdom to its knees. Ferda became an archmage, knowing that people still despise him and will come after him for payback one day in the future. Because of this, he needs to reach the ninth circle, the realm of a demigod, to obtain absolute power, to crush anyone who stands against him without mercy. Researching through ancient books, he at last finds the final ingredient necessary to get there. Upon seeing the page of the book, he wonders if that was just a cruel joke from fate itself against him. The last ingredient he needs so badly is the heart of the red dragon, Sovereign Valdrova herself. Now the scene shifted to her hideout, where she used to be isolated from the humans. She was badly injured on the ground. She mutters, "Fate is truly cruelly ironic. To think the one who was to be my fiancée would come to take my life." We then see that a battle had taken place between them. One of her horns was broken in battle. Ferda coughed up ketchup and shouts, "You should die in silence by my hand, tyrant Valdrova." Hearing this, she replies, "I am well aware that I am called a tyrant. But tell me why you hate me. I have never shown myself even before your birth. I have remained isolated here, far from the human world. What grudge drives you to harbor such intense hostility toward me?" This made him even more furious with her. He shouts, "You are the roots of all my misery. Your foolish greed in seeking a fiancé got me cast out of my family." Valdrova asks whether it's truly all her fault. In absolute hatred, he shouts, "Yes. A vicious dragon demanding a human companion. That greed alone is your crime against me. That greed of yours made me miserable. Do you even know that at all?" This made her tremble just a little, and her voice seemed as if she was about to cry. Ferda faltered for a moment, wondering what that strange reaction was. However, he doesn't care about her. Thanks to this, he bought enough time to gather mana. He needs to deliver one final blow against her. The dragon then raised its claw, muttering that she finally understands everything. Then she made a sudden movement without warning. Startled, Ferda tries to defend himself using his magic barrier. A devastating strike lands and blood begins to trickle down Ferda's face. But to his surprise, it was the blood of the dragon who begins to tear open her own chest with her claws before him. Ferda is utterly horrified and confused, not understanding why she is harming herself like this. She then asks if his magic truly required a dragon's heart to ascend. Desperate, he realizes she wants to destroy her own heart. He yells for her to stop right now. Little by little, she begins to open her chest. Ferda races against time to stop her, because that heart is his only chance to evolve his magic. He fires a spell to try to stop her. The spell struck her head, and the immense dragon begins to stagger backward. Ferda screams in panic as he sees her claws continuing to squeeze her chest area. When the dragon at last collapses, Ferda wonders in desperation what could have happened to the valuable heart. He focuses his vision and notices the reflection of an intense golden glow in his own eyes. To Ferda's relief, the precious dragon heart remains fully intact before him. The dragon calmly tells him to take the heart, leaving Ferda confused by her action. He mutters, "I don't understand you, Valdrova. Why go this far? If you wanted to fight back, you could have easily killed me by now." In a trembling tone, she replies, "I know that much. It is simply because I am the reason you became miserable. For a long time, I have loathed myself. I despised the violent blood coursing through my veins, the urge to rage and destroy without reason. I could not stop myself. My very existence strikes fear into people. If I were to die, it would be resolved for everyone. Yet I clung to life, wishing for happiness. My foolish dream has brought trouble to so many people." In tears, she mutters her final words, "Since I have brought misery to everyone, I pray that you, at least, will find happiness because of me, for that is the very last thing I can do for you." With that, the gigantic creature at last fades away and falls lifeless onto the dark ground. Ferda feels a strange tightness in his chest and wonders what kind of feeling that could be. He becomes quite irritated that such a desired victory is leaving such a bitter taste. He inwardly screams in frustration that the dragon tried to mess with his head until her very last breath. Ferda tries to focus on his main goal, remembering that the path to Ninth Circle is right in front of him at last. He then raises the dragon heart to finally seek absolute power. Ferda thinks that, if he can absorb the essence of the ancient dragon, he will finally be able to surpass the limits of humanity itself, and will manage to be reborn in this world as a powerful and feared demigod of legend. A gigantic explosion of light and dust with great force consumes the entire area. In an instant, the scenery changes completely, and he finds himself floating bare in an immense dark void. Ferda wonders what is happening, since he had consumed the dragon heart without error. But the sensation at the moment is like sinking deeper and deeper into an endless abyss. He begins to question if that endless fall is just a side effect of consuming her heart after all. At that instant, an overwhelming and uncontrollable wave of someone else's feelings suddenly invades his mind. A strong bolt of magical electricity strikes his head directly in the middle of the darkness around him. With that, Ferda realizes in shock that those memories and feelings actually belong to Valdrova herself. He finally manages to see the truth and understand what was going through that creature's mind back then. He sees an ancient and deep despair that makes his own problems seem insignificant by comparison. She was a beautiful, lonely soul who still tried to embrace the world despite everything. Ferda realizes that all the anger and hatred that fueled his journey to take her life were painfully pathetic, and he wonders in tears what it was that he had just done to her. He questions what he truly wanted so badly all along. Was it to become a great mage, get revenge, or become a demigod in the end? At that moment, he remembers when he was just a small child drawing alone at his desk in silence. He had drawn his family being happy together under one roof. He realized that the answer to his question was always an absolute no from the start. He only wanted to build a simple family and live in peace with them. Remembering Valdrova's human form with great sadness, he wonders if she shared the exact same simple dream as his own dream. He now realizes that his entire pursuit of power and revenge made absolutely no sense at all. The dragon nest was already gone by his own hands, making his grand achievement completely empty and meaningless. Sincere tears filled with regret begin to roll down his face once again. He remembers that the only magic a ninth circle mage can cast is the wish spell itself. Even thinking that everything is in vain, Ferda decides to cast the ultimate magic in the middle of that glowing circle before him. Suddenly, he hears a familiar voice calling his name and opens his eyes in surprise at once. Looking around, he realizes he is back in the luxurious office of his family's mansion once again. Before him was his father, Arambalt Rosnova, scolding him for being distracted while the two were talking together. Ferda remembers that this man had lost his mind before passing away and begins to suspect exactly what day this might be for him. His father repeats the exact phrase, saying that his arranged marriage to Grand Duke Valdrova has already been decided for him. His father goes on to say that he is certain Ferda knows very well what that decision means for them. His father begins to warn that if he chooses to refuse the engagement to the Archduke, Ferda will be disowned from the Rosnova family without mercy. Ferda takes a step forward and realizes that he actually managed to travel back in time somehow. He interrupts his father resolutely and says with great firmness that he understands all of it perfectly now. Ferda swears he will not run away this time and formally announces that he accepts the engagement to Grand Duke Valdrova without hesitation. The scene now shifted to the second son of the family, Hurin Rosnova himself. He is extremely shocked to hear that his brother accepted the engagement so willingly. Hurin asks the servant, "Are you sure you heard right?" He's pathetic enough to beg for his life, but he's not the type to walk into his own grave. So what is he doing right now then? The butler explains that Ferda is due to leave soon, but he dismissed all the servants and locked himself in his own room alone. Hurin smiles wickedly and decides to pay a visit to mock his younger brother's desperate face one last time. Meanwhile, inside Ferda's room, he was calmly dressing up in front of a mirror by himself. Suddenly, Hurin kicks the door open and shouts, "Ferda, you bastard! Why haven't you left yet already?" But looking into the room, the older brother gets a look of absolute astonishment and surprise on his face. He is shocked to see Ferda calmly getting dressed, since he had thought Ferda would be crying and throwing a tantrum about not wanting to go there. Ferda looks at him calmly and questions his brother's lack of manners for invading the room without knocking first. Hurin is surprised that Ferda is dressing himself without help. Ferda explains that he dismissed the servants to get used to not having help from anyone. Hurin is suspicious of that drastic change and asks if he truly understands the meaning of the engagement this time. Ferda replies with absolute calmness that he knows very well what it means. It basically means being kicked out from the family for good. Hurin laughs nervously and says that in reality this engagement is a death sentence, asking if he knows why the position of fiancé is always vacant there. Ferda replies that he knows it well enough. Huron further says, in the past, Valdrova's first fiancé was the third prince of the empire, a perfect man with brilliant intellect, striking looks, and immense popularity among everyone. He even gave up his claim to the throne to become the fiancé of the violent dragon, and within a single day of arriving, he was beaten to a pulp by her. And yet, do you really think you can pull off an engagement that even the third prince couldn't survive before you? Well, I suppose no one can stop a fool who wants to walk straight into a dragon's mouth on his own. Don't even think about disobeying the family and running away from them. If you do, I'll personally take your head before Valdrova even gets the chance to act. Ferda looks at him with disdain and replies, "Brother, you should really worry about keeping your own pants zipped. Everyone knows about the filthy way you look at our eldest brother's wife behind closed doors." This struck a nerve, and he tried to lunge at him with hatred in his eyes. The butler held him back, while Ferda mockingly comments that Huron will have to hold back his urge to strike him down. He smiles and comments that his face is far too valuable right now for him to allow any kind of bruising, saying that the journey to the dragon's territory will be long and dangerous. Ferda calmly says goodbye and heads to the carriage without hesitation. The old middle-aged butler begins to cry heavily into a handkerchief during the young man's departure. He says through tears that it was an absolute honor to serve the young master during all these years of his life. Ferda knows that is a lie because if it were a true honor, he wouldn't have poisoned his food when he was a child in secret. Ferda remembers that in his childhood, he thought he was naturally weak, not knowing that even the servants were his enemies all along. Just remembering that dark time, Ferda feels a deep disgust and a strong urge to wring the butler's neck with his own hands. However, he merely places his hand on the butler's shoulder and thanks him for his hard work for so long over the years. He comments cynically that it must not have been easy to put up with him for years like that. This leaves the butler tensed at the comment in silence. Ferda asks him to take good care of his old family in his absence, and finally gets into the carriage without looking back. Sitting inside, he notices that his mind is at peace, perhaps because he already got his revenge on everyone in another life long ago. He rests his head on the window and remembered his past life in silence. The magic he used was like a drug, ecstatic at first, but as his tolerance grew, it became completely uncontrollable over time. When he was consumed by it, everything felt thrilling and exhilarating at first. He remembered Valdrova offering her heart in her final moments before him. Remembering all these, he decided he doesn't want to go back to that life ever again. He sighed, saying, "This peace is actually quite nice for a change right now. Does this mean I'll never trigger my awakening as a mage again in this life?" Suddenly, the journey comes to an end, and the coachman calls out in a very frightened tone that they have finally arrived at their destination. A wooden sign in the middle of the woods warns that the Grand Duke's territory begins there, and that entry is strictly forbidden to outsiders. Ferda steps down from the carriage and calmly sits on top of his travel suitcase to wait for his guide to arrive. The coachman leaves in a hurry, shouting from a distance that he hopes the young master manages to stay safe and healthy out there. It appears Ferda had told him that a dragon would appear soon, so that's why the coachman had left so early in fear. Ferda thinks it is good not to be watched, but figures he will need to use simple fourth circle spells if any wild beasts appear nearby. At that moment, the wind blows more intensely and brings some leaves, immediately catching the young man's attention at once. Ferda focuses his attention on the forest and notices the mysterious silhouette of a girl, hidden among the plants ahead. The young woman in a maid uniform approaches and formally introduces herself as Ruri, loyal servant to Valdrova the dragon. She asks if he is Lord Ferda Rosnova, and the young man calmly confirms his own identity without hesitation. Ruri makes a gesture with her hand, indicating that she will accompany him and guide him on the path toward the castle ahead. As they walked, Ferda inwardly says there is nothing the Empire cannot conquer in its eyes. The citizens of the Archon Empire were drunk on its power and glory. But in truth, that power was far from absolute or limitless. The eastern part of the Cereeds continent, the land of demons itself. This monster-infested region was a calamity that humanity could never hope to conquer on its own. And yet, the one who stopped the monsters and ruled the front lines was none other than the Red Dragon, Valdrova herself. She built the only line of defense in the land of demons against them. Yet they call her a demonic dragon without reason? Her notoriety is completely unearned given what she accomplished for humanity. They slander her, claiming she's secretly raising a monster army, but they wouldn't even utter a word to her face in person. Just then, a pack of hungry wolves sneaked on him from nearby. Ferda quickly moved his head away as a projectile flew past him, scaring the wolves away at once. Bro felt as if this maid is trying to finish him off and claim it as an accident afterward. Ruri nonchalantly says, "You have nothing to worry about here. As long as you are with me, those beasts won't dare attack you." Bro just thanks her and asks how much further they have to walk from here. She revealed it will take about 2 hours on foot. He asks how she got here so quickly. She replied that if she was alone, 10 seconds would be enough to fly over the distance. Hearing this, Ferda is impressed by her speed. He inwardly says, "You really are no ordinary maid at all. A subordinate carrying the blood of a dragon spawn by birth, with innate strength, magic, and hidden horns and tail as well. She is a high spawn on a completely different level from ordinary spawn around here." Anyway, now using a wooden cane as a support, Ferda suggests she fly him over to the castle instead. She asks wouldn't that require her to carry him the whole way. He tells her to not worry, and that he can handle it himself. However, she bluntly says no, and that she simply doesn't want to do that. Bro stood there trembling from exhaustion, flabbergasted by the situation before him. He then suggests resting for a bit, but she tells him to keep walking because her master is already waiting for his arrival inside. Ferda makes a face of discouragement, realizing he will have to endure the entire walk through the exhaustion, and that getting married is no easy task after all. After walking a great deal, the maid finally knocks on the enormous door of the territory's castle at last. She announces loudly to her master that her fiancé has finally just arrived at the location as ordered. Ferda feels an absurd pressure coming from inside, and is astonished by the immense aura of the dragon within. Ruri tells him to wait here while she goes inside to get the message, but the young man suggests speaking face to face with her. The servant glares at him with fury, asking if someone of his standing thinks they have the right to see the Duke in person without permission. Bro instantly shimmered down in embarrassment. Shortly after, she returns outside, announcing that she will deliver the official message from Duke Valdrova herself. She cleared her throat and says, "To thee who came to be betrothed to me by order of the Archon Empire, I commend thee for reaching this place despite knowing my brutal nature well. However, I have no desire for a forced engagement with thee. Return to where you came at once." Hearing this, he inwardly says, "I came all this way as her fiancé, and she's sending me back already? In my past life, I would have gladly accepted and run away, but I am different now than before." Ferda bowed and firmly declares that he has no intention of turning back, and very much wishes to proceed with the engagement as planned. Ruri was flabbergasted by his answer. Seeing her hesitation, Ferda asks if she won't deliver his response to her master inside. She reluctantly accepts his request. Right after, Ruri reappears, slamming a very large and heavy sack full of gold coins before him. She began relaying Valdrova's reply, "I highly praise thy resolve by coming here for thy own accord. If returning is difficult for you, I shall grant wealth instead. So, leave this place and build a new life elsewhere in peace." Ferda then romantically replied, "I have no interest in power or wealth. My only interest is my engagement to you, Grand Duke Valdrova, and nothing else." Hearing all that persistence from the young man, Ruri closes her eyes and lets out a deep sigh of anger and frustration. Suddenly, gripped by a sudden rage, she clenches her fist tightly and delivers a strike into the air with force. She points her finger at Ferda and harshly says, "I will not waste my breath. Leave this place at once and never return." Ferda comments that the response was far too short to be from the Duke, and she confesses that those words are her own this time. Horns appear on her head, and her nails grow like sharp claws as she makes a direct threat against him. Ruri unleashes her monstrous aura, finally revealing her immense reptilian tail behind her. Ferda tries to shield himself against the terrible gale, realizing that it is the terrifying dragon fear itself. He falls to the ground, and she rants that she knows well that mortals like him are just garbage who cares nothing for Lady Valdrova, driven only by power and ambition alone. Hearing this, Ferda asks whether that's why the third prince died back then. Ruri affirms, saying his head was filled with nothing but plans to use the engagement to exploit Lady Valdrova. He was a shameless fool to believe he could hide such intentions from her. The maid takes a firm step forward and pins him against the ground beneath her. Staring into his eyes, she coldly muttered, "Deceiving my master. Do you wish to die the same miserable death as the third prince did?" However, Even being in a dangerous situation, Ferda merely gives her a slight confident smile in return. Ruri is surprised when the young man begins to make a sincere oath, swearing that there is no lie in his words at all. He guarantees he did not come forced by anyone, and that he is also not after profit or personal advantages of any kind. He remembers that, in his other life, the dragon gave her own heart to save a selfish man like him without hesitation. Ferda promises that this time he will stand firmly by her side, loudly declaring that he came to be her groom by choice. He says that since they will be married, she herself should speak directly to him instead of using a maid as her voice. The servant's fist trembles with rage, finding the young man's boldness to be completely insolent and disrespectful. She lunges at him with her claws ready, furiously yelling for him to stop spouting nonsense at once. Suddenly, Ruri freezes completely right in front of Ferda, pulling back her claw strike. She steps away reluctantly and asks to be excused for a moment, receiving Ferda's calm agreement in response. Inside the castle, the maid faithfully relays to her master the bold words spoken by the young man outside. She makes a respectful bow on the floor and concludes that was exactly what the young man declared to her. Then we see Valdrova's dragon form in full. The maid kept glazing her master with concern. Valdrova switched to her human form and asks in surprise if the young man truly said all of that himself. Curious about the boldness, the red-haired duchess confesses that she wishes to find out what kind of person he really is inside. Ruri shares that he is incredibly weak, looking like he was going to die from exhaustion just from the walk to the castle alone. The maid says with disdain that he is hideously ugly and suggests throwing him out right away, but receives a stern tone from her master instead. Ruri apologizes awkwardly and confesses that the young man is actually quite handsome and that he's the type that has likely broken many hearts before. But the duchess says that was not her question at all. Letting out a long sigh of defeat, the maid admits that the young man seems unusual in some way. She explains seriously that being a dragon's pawn, it is extremely easy for her to terrify any mere mortal before her. However, Ferda did not show the slightest sign of fear, even after she unleashed her terrifying aura upon him. Because of this, she believes the young man will be perfectly capable of looking directly into the eyes of the duchess herself without fear. Suddenly, Valdrova lets out a light and naughty chuckle that takes the maid completely by surprise there. The duchess comments with a satisfied smile that she finds that attitude from the young man very good indeed. She is very pleased to know that there is finally a human capable of holding her direct gaze with confidence. She rejoices upon realizing that they will finally be able to converse and face each other in a completely normal way at last. Ruri repeats the word quite astonished, finding her master's desire to want to act normally very strange indeed. The duchess confirms affectionately while the servant merely accepts the orders in absolute silence once more. Ruri returns outside and informs Ferda that her lady has indeed decided to move forward with their engagement after all. Next, she states that she will guide him and show the way to the guest room where he will be staying for now. Stepping into the luxurious room, Ferda notices in surprise that the place is much cleaner and better maintained than he imagined beforehand. He asks who takes care of the cleaning here, and she proudly shares that she is the only one who takes care of it herself. Then, she harshly calls the young man as a guest once again. Ferda finds it strange to be called that, but she counters saying that since the marriage hasn't occurred, he is just a guest for now. He compares her to a protective watchdog and decides to ask when the engagement ceremony will finally be held there. Ruri explains that the event will be simple and low-key, taking place in 1 month inside the dragon's lair itself as planned. Ferda becomes quite thoughtful as he reflects on having a 1-month deadline until the official set date of the marriage ceremony. The maid glares at him with her arms crossed, maintaining her completely suspicious and watchful posture over him the entire time. She warns him that no one is going to hand him the engagement on a silver platter and that this deadline will serve for him to prove his true worth to them. Ruri points her finger and demands that he manage to obtain a status worthy of being the partner of such a grand being in 30 days or less. Ferda is tired by the demand upon hearing that he will need to prove he has the qualifications to be her groom within it. He asks if that demand is a wish of the duchess, but Ruri confesses that it was her own personal decision alone. She explains that her master is very soft and forgives everything, but that she herself doesn't accept just anyone living inside here at all. Ruri demands that even having a weak body, Ferda must manage to show in a practical way that he possesses true potential within himself. She warns that if he fails the challenge, he will never truly be recognized as a worthy companion to the dragon Valdrova. Ferda sighed and became thoughtful for a moment. He feels happy that his future wife has a good servant by her side already. Even though Ruri dislikes him, she puts her master first above everything. She's pointing out exactly what is required of Valdrova's partner. But he doesn't understand why someone this loyal wasn't seen anywhere the day he killed Valdrova in his past life. Anyway, he accepts the challenge and asks ironically if he needs to go as far as becoming emperor, but she replies that it's enough not to be looked down upon by other rulers of the continent. Hearing this, he inwardly says, "You make it sound so easy to me. You are asking me to show potential that would satisfy even more than an emperor himself." He then sighed and accepted her challenge without complaint. Ruri glares at him, quite irritated, not understanding why the human is so calm and relaxed about this. She asks angrily if he thinks dragons are easy or if he has mental issues, but he calmly denies it with confidence. Ferda asks her not to worry, guaranteeing that he will show his true capacity in just 1 month from now. Ruri observes him suspiciously, wondering where all that immense confidence the human displayed was coming from so suddenly. Later night fell over the Grand Duchess's immense castle with the full moon shining in the dark sky above. Ferda walks through his room while inwardly saying, "I need to prove my potential within 1 month. It is true that right now I have no power, but on this continent a mage is a rare existence, and among them the experience of reaching the 9th circle is even rarer. That is an experience unique to me alone. If my senses form back then remain, it is entirely possible to succeed. For a mage, the 1st circle is the most critical because it is the crossroads that decides the nature of your mana circuit from then on. A blue circle, formed through calm meditation and focus. It is slow, but because of its stability, it is the path chosen by most mages in practice. On the other hand, a red circle, born from volatile emotions and rage. It grants rapid strength, but you are easily consumed by your emotions, making it easy to lose your mind over time. In my past life, I became a great mage fueled solely by hatred and revenge. Taking the path I have already walked would make me stronger much faster, but this time I will take a different path instead. To ensure I remain completely unshakable, I need to begin training from tonight." 1 week passes at the castle in silence. Ferda sits on the floor of his room in a lotus position to try to meditate once more. He concentrates deeply and begins to manifest a small bluish magical energy between his hands with great effort. With a tired sigh, he sees the energy dissipate and realizes he has failed once again in his attempt to form it. He reflects that creating a blue circle takes about 3 years, but he thought he could do it quickly due to having his memories from before rewinding time with him. He knows that only 3 weeks remain until then. Just then, Ferda is interrupted by Ruri, who enters the room asking if he is preparing himself for the challenge. He confirms that he is trying to prepare, but the maid placed his food and comments that nothing seems to have changed at all. Ferda eats calmly and says things will work out if he keeps trying, leaving the girl silent and irritated by his confidence. While eating his meal, Ferda inwardly admits that he has made no progress and needs a different approach this time. Suddenly, a very strong tremor shakes the entire room, taking him completely by surprise without warning. Ferda asks what that vibration is, and Ruri explains that her master is hunting monsters at this very moment outside. Ferda finds the hunt strange, but Ruri explains that she is personally wiping out the monsters, crawling out from the land of demons at the eastern border of the continent. Faced with this, Ferda looks thoughtfully and murmurs Valdrova's name under his breath. He stands up resolutely and informs the maid that he wishes to see that battle with his own eyes in person. Ruri strongly advises against the idea, causing him to question the reason he cannot go there with her. She explains seriously that the mind of an ordinary human could never bear the sight of such combat up close. Ruri even mocks him, saying, "Unless you want to embarrassingly wet yourself right before the engagement ceremony, you should stay here and behave." However, Ferda slams his hand firmly on the table and firmly rejects the advice to stay out of it completely. He states that seeing the combat is the duty of the one who will be her companion, insisting on seeing everything up close for himself. Faced with his stubbornness, Ruri spreads her dragon wings and flies swiftly through the skies, taking Ferda with her without warning. Within a second, they land on a grassy area, and the maid announces that they have finally arrived at the location of the battle. Ferda drops to his knees on the ground, feeling sick from the absurd speed of the trip, which felt almost like teleportation through space. With his stomach turning, he complains about the discomfort, but the servant tells him to focus his attention on the true target ahead. She harshly orders him to stand up and look ahead once and for all with his own eyes. The two observe from the top of a cliff where a thick dark purple mist covers the region below in every direction. Focusing his vision toward the chaos, he nervously wonders if this is where Veldrova is battling right now. Many creatures began restraining her, however she tore through them the next moment as flames erupted everywhere around her. Two enormous serpents hissed at her, but Veldrova grabbed them by the neck and crushed her enemies with ease. Next, fiery energy builds up rapidly in her throat, and she unleashes a devastating breath of fire that incinerates everything in the path below in an instant. The wave of heat and strong wind reaches the top of the cliff, but Ruri remains firm and calm in the face of the impact down below without moving. Veldrova lets out an extremely deafening and intimidating roar across the valley. The sonic impact of the roar spreads like a shockwave throughout the valley with tremendous force. Feeling the crushing pressure of that creature, Ferda begins to break out in a cold sweat and tremble with dread before such power and presence. He collapses to his knees on the ground, surprised by the absurd amount of strength his future bride possesses within her. The intimidating aura of the dragon's roar deeply affects the mind of any human who hears it up close without protection. Trembling and with his hand on his chest, Ferda tries to breathe while Ruri asks if he finally understood the situation before him. She coldly states how ridiculous it is for a mere human to dare marry a being as powerful as a dragon like her. Ruri points to the immense dragon and says, that is the true form of the one who will be Ferda's future companion in marriage. Ruri notices Ferda's hand on the ground and realizes he is trembling significantly under all that pressure and fear. She thinks to herself that he is trembling exactly as she expected, justifying why she had warned the young man before this battle. Ruri now changed back into her human form and explained saying, in the blood of a red dragon lies what humans call the essence of the evil dragon within it, a violent urge to kill that cannot exist without destruction. It is an innate nature regardless of personality or character. You will be crushed every single day. Resolve alone will never be enough to survive. Do you finally understand what it means to be a dragon's partner for life? A human and a dragon can never be one as equals. Ruri inwardly says, with this my master will soon realize it too for herself. That dreaming of being with a human is futile after all. However, Ferda raises his head with a smile on his face and murmurs that all of it is truly magnificent, surprising the servant beyond words. Ruri is stunned to realize that instead of dread, this man is looking at the dragon with pure admiration and wonder in his eyes. She steps back a bit with disgust, and wonders if the human is actually some kind of crazy masochist after all. Later that night in the castle, Ferda was lying in his bed, bruised by the beating gifted by the maid earlier that day. His body is a complete wreck from the ordeal. He was hit by dragon fear, and even a roar from Veldrova. It is a miracle his mind is still intact, but at this rate, he will waste a whole day instead of forming a circle of mana. He then begins to question for what reason he decided to go watch that dangerous combat in the first place at all. Recalling in detail all the impressive scenes he witnessed in the valley during this day, he admits that it was terrifying beyond belief to him. But he wanted to keep watching, hiding herself at the eastern edge of the world, tearing apart and crushing monsters before her. All of it is just to protect what she loves most. The path of a noble red knight who chose a life of suffering for others. How magnificent she truly is. And to think that they both will marry one day. At that moment, a strong red energy begins to concentrate in his hands, making him realize it is the red circle forming now. He grows desperate trying to contain the energy because he knows he cannot repeat the same mistakes of the past and needs to reject this power before it consumes him. But looking closer at the flow of that red mana, he is intrigued by what he is seeing inside it this time. The image of the imposing warrior in red armor resurfaces with full force in his thoughts once again. Ferda feels his chest pound as he intensely focuses his mind on the striking image of Veldrova before him. He notices that the more he remembers her battle, the more his circuits clear with a feeling that is not hatred or revenge at all. Sitting in meditation over the energy, he tries to identify this mysterious emotion before it completely dissipates from his hands. He concentrates entirely on this feeling, beginning to compress and spin the magical energy rapidly between his hands with precision. Ferda channels all his willpower with the goal of manifesting a single powerful magic circle within himself. He manages to create the red circle successfully and smiles upon noticing that this time, the energy is completely different from before in every way. With a firm gaze, he guarantees to himself that the same mistakes of the past will never happen again in this new life ever again. The next day, Ruri enters the room, and her jaw drops as she asks if he truly managed to activate his circuits in a single night alone. Ferda praises her perception, while the maid insists on knowing how he accomplished a feat that would normally be impossible for anyone. He brags, saying he managed it because he is no ordinary person, and asks what she thought of his rapid progress so far. Ruri grudgingly admits that he met the qualifications, but Ferda acknowledges that he still has a long journey ahead of him to complete. After having his meal and wiping his mouth, he puts away his napkin and asks if there is a place nearby where he can train, and the scene changes to a field with training targets nearby. Ruri appears holding a broom and proudly announces that she prepared the entire training area exactly as he had requested for him. Impressed, Ferda claps and praises the servant's efficiency for putting everything together by herself in just half a day's work alone. She finds this strange and says, "I cannot believe all you asked for was a simple training target rather than expensive magical tools. What exactly are you planning to practice here?" He explains that he's training to control his mana efficiently from now on. Without proper control, he will end up wasting mana for no reason at all. The explanation confused her greatly. He asks, "Is it different for dragons then?" She affirmed, saying, "To us, that sounds like saying you need training just to breathe properly. If other dragon spawn heard you, they would call you primitive for sure." Ferda asks whether his actions look primitive to her as well. She proudly nodded, stating she's also a dragon spawn by birth. Ferda felt offended that a natural-born genius like her would never understand the human effort behind it. He then turned and marched away in frustration. Ruri asks whether she can watch him train from here. He in a slight angry tone replies that she can watch him breathe if she wants instead. Once he walked to a distance, he stopped and concentrated with focus. He inwardly explained, "The basis of mana control is stability and balance. That is the way of the blue circle after all. But my circle is red. I must unleash my emotions while keeping them under absolute control at once. Only when I overcome that contradiction will the power open its path for me. In my past life, it took a year to draw mana from the raging torrent, and another year to condense it into a sphere of power. To recreate the mana bullet I forged with blood and sweat in my past life once more. Now it only takes 2 minutes for me." Ruri watched in complete disbelief as Ferda effortlessly created a perfectly stable sphere of crimson mana on his very first attempt before her. Before she could even process what she had seen, he calmly formed 3 more floating spheres around his hand with ease. With precise control, Ferda directed the projectiles toward the practiced target ahead. The crimson spheres shot forward at incredible speed, streaking through the air before exploding directly upon impact with force. The target was completely destroyed in a single devastating blast of mana. Satisfied with the results, Ferda muttered that his skills haven't rusted at all. Meanwhile, Ruri remained silent, carefully analyzing the flawless display she had just witnessed before her. Some time later, Ruri met with Veldrova inside a cave and reported everything she had observed regarding Ferda's unexpectedly rapid awakening as a mage that day. Since Veldrova was unfamiliar with human magical standards, she asked how impressive the achievement truly was in comparison. Ruri hesitantly replies he was flawless, without a single mistake from the start, which actually makes him look highly suspicious and dangerous to her. Veldrova asks the reason, and Ruri in a tsundere tone replies that it's because no human could reach that level without making a single mistake, so he must be hiding something. Maybe he's a pain-loving pervert or something. Veldrova is amused that for Ruri to acknowledge a human to such an extent is unheard of, so he must be a truly remarkable man the more she observes him over time. Ruri begrudgingly admits that he is remarkable in truth. Veldrova decided that she wanted to believe the sincerity Ferda had consistently shown toward her until now. Ruri, however, could not forget how deeply humans had hurt her beloved mistress in the past before. Determined to protect Veldrova from experiencing that pain again, she resolved to uncover Ferda's true intentions for herself. With that goal in mind, Ruri proposed giving Ferda an important assignment that would reveal his true character at last. Intrigued by the suggestion, Valdrova asks what kind of task she has in mind for him. The scene then shifted to the Eastern Front Coalition Hall that day. The local nobles gather, surprised by the Grand Duchess's sudden call for that assembly of them. Some lords complain about the meeting amidst the danger of the monsters, but soon comment on the imminent arrival of her new groom as well. One of them is shocked to learn that someone dumb enough actually accepted that insane proposal and asks who the fool could be this time. A noble replied that the groom is the third young lord of Rosnova family himself. Hearing that, the nobles mock that an 18-year-old brat is acting like a king just because he has the Grand Duke's backing behind him. They comment that he's a defective product who can't even handle a sword properly. The other are surprised by this revelation. He's from the Rosnova family, the Empire's guardian knights, but he's worse than a common soldier in combat. Then Lord Count Ulvera Consulis, sitting in the middle, spoke up, saying, well, how long could he possibly last? No need to worry about him. The Grand Duke will probably tear this fiancé to shreds, too soon enough. The other nobles agree and stop arguing for now. Just then, Ferda entered, dressed in an elegant red noble outfit, as Ruri announced, Lord Ferda Rosnova's arrival before the council. We then get a flashback to earlier. Ferda was reading calmly in the library and asked if he truly needed to meet with the lords personally. Ruri explained it was necessary and asked if he knew the reason her master carries the imposing title of Grand Duchess today. Ferda affirmed, saying, the aspect of darkness, the source of demonic energy that helped birth the Demon King, the Black Dragon, Godwin himself. The one who ended that Black Dragon's life was Valdrova alone. Hearing this, Ruri nodded, saying, indeed that is correct. For that feat, the Empire granted her the title of Grand Duchess and this territory as well. Currently, the most important task for Lady Valdrova is monster subjugation across the border. Therefore, as her husband, you must manage the territory and lords of the Eastern Front for her in her absence. Simply put, my master handles external affairs, and you handle the household matters. Ferda asks whether it means he's the master of the house now. He realizes she is testing his leadership ability and accepts the challenge to go present himself before all the lords without hesitation. Back at the meeting, Ferda formally introduces himself as the Grand Duchess's future husband and takes the floor before the Council of Nobles. Showing no hesitation, he glares at everyone coldly and directly asks how they would like to be addressed by him from now on. The direct question takes the lords by surprise, making them realize right off the bat that the young man will not be an easy target to dominate at all. The moment they speak, the hierarchy will be set between them. Then the old count cunningly spoke up, saying, we are but lords who reside under the Grand Duke's light. Naturally, we must show respect to her future husband as expected. However, the lords gathered here have pledged their loyalty to the Empire since before you were even born. Therefore, shouldn't you, as her husband, show us the proper courtesy in return? This made the other nobles grin with confidence. However, Ferda coldly says, is that your final answer? Should I speak to you with respect, or address you as subordinates? Just answer that question for me. Pressured by Ferda's demeanor, the old count gulps and fearfully gives in, accepting that it is the groom's right to speak down to them as he wishes. Ferda then says, as you all know, even if I become her husband, there is little I will change directly. Your territories are in your hands, so continue to manage them as you see fit for now. Whether you rule wisely or exploit your people is your choice. Before he finished speaking, a lord stands up, slamming the table and shouts in fury, asking if the young man is implying that they steal from and exploit their own people like criminals. Ferda raises his hand and apologizes, claiming it was just a small slip of his tongue in passing. The irritated man taunts, saying that now he can clearly understand the reason the young man was banished by his own family long ago. He shouts, you were cast out by a family of knights, and now you're trying to play mage, but you'd better show some respect to your superiors here. You first circle fiancé of the Grand Duchess. You only stand here because of your status as the Grand Duke's fiancé, but what makes you any better than me, a fourth circle mage in this room? Ferda calmly murmured, a fourth circle, huh? Decent enough, I suppose. This made the man furious at once. He inwardly fumed. A fourth circle mage is highly respected wherever they go across the Empire. A mage's tier is determined solely by their skill, and a mere first circle dares insult me to my face. He then begins to gather his magical energy to teach the young man a lesson in manners once and for all. Facing the start of the aggression, Ferda extends his hand with complete calmness and says he has an interesting proposal which he might like to consider. He suggests that, to test the skills of a mere first circle, the two should hold a duel right there to decide the matter once and for all. The scene changes to a duel arena where the nobles comment that the outcome of a fight between a first circle and a fourth circle is already more than obvious to everyone. Meanwhile, in silence, Ruri simply observes the situation while other nobles wonder whether Thessalos will actually go easy on Ferda this time. As the two opponents take their combat positions, right before the entire audience, Ferda directly asks which spell his opponent intends to use against him. Thessalos feels offended by the direct question and angrily complains about how extremely rude the young man is for demanding that before the fight even begins. He smiles with disdain and mocks, saying the young man must be dying of fear, offering a chance for him to back out immediately while he can. Right there, Thessalos grandly announces that he will use the powerful fourth circle spell called Magic Blast against him. The spectators are startled to hear the name of the devastating technique and whisper worriedly if Ferda will even manage to leave there alive afterward. Ferda remains unfazed and says he will also reveal his technique in return. He admits that the only spell he knows how to use is the mana shot at present. The opponent laughs upon hearing about the basic mana shot spell, but Ferda responds with absolute confidence that he does not intend to lose by any means today. He makes a slight gesture with his fingers and calmly comments that, despite everything, he happens to have plenty of knowledge at his disposal from before. Infuriated by such arrogance coming from a first circle mage, Thessalos shouts and begins to concentrate all his destructive magical power at once. With that, a huge and glowing magic transmutation circle forms behind him, ready to unleash his fatal attack upon Ferda. Ferda notices that his rival is stirring his emotions unsteadily to inflate his power, recognizing him as another wielder of the red circle, just like himself. Without wasting any more time, Ferda began forming simple red magic bullets between his fingers. It's the same red magic which Thessalos uses, but Ferda's magic is filled with different emotion entirely. Thessalos is surprised by this strange difference. Ferda calmly muttered that this match is already over, and launched his magic bullets towards him without hesitation. Thessalos quickly casted a shield in response. However, the bullets passed by him and struck the incomplete magic circle behind him. Thessalos finally realized he wasn't the target from the beginning at all. He's shocked upon seeing the magic circle getting destroyed before him. In disbelief, he wonders whether this is really someone who is at first circle, because even he can't do this with such precision. Just then, a final bullet struck his hand, ending the duel on the spot. Now on his knees, he couldn't believe the defeat he had suffered. Standing victoriously before him, Ferda asks whether he yields at last. Thessalos hesitates for a moment. However, he wants to get stronger. He'll do anything if it makes him stronger in the future. So he finally admitted defeat before everyone. The spectators are surprised that a fourth circle mage lost to a first circle so easily. A noble secretly whispered that maybe this dragon spawn secretly intervened during the duel. However, she furiously warns, if you can't believe your own eyes, perhaps it's best to gouge those useless things out yourself. The noble quickly shimmered down by the threat in fear. Meanwhile, Thessalos held Ferda's hand and began glazing that he never expected to meet someone of his caliber, and that this world is truly vast after all. Ferda calmly replies, your magic was excellent as well. If you were a bit faster, I would have been in danger back there. Seeing the strength of the East reassures me greatly. Thessalos chuckled, saying, I'm honored by your praise. My demotion from the capital wasn't entirely a bad thing after all. It is truly an honor to meet the groom in person. Hearing that he was demoted from the capital, Ferda curiously asks his name at last. The man introduced himself as Thessalos Vulture with pride. Upon hearing that name, Ferda has a flash in his memory and thoughtfully murmurs that he finally remembered who he is now. Thessalos is surprised that he knows him at all. With the intense look, Ferda reveals to Thessalos that he was his great benefactor in the past. The man becomes totally confused by the revelation, asking when did they ever meet before this. But before he could say further, Ferda gently touches the middle of his forehead with the tip of his finger and mercilessly used mana shot, ending the man's life without warning. The nobles watching this froze in terror, with their mouths open before the shocking scene before them. Thessalos falls lifeless and bleeding on the arena floor, while Ferda observes him from above with total coldness in his gaze. He mutters that it's the exact reason he could not let him live, because in the future the man would end up bringing immense sadness to his bride Valdrova. Meanwhile, the nobles stood there, staring at Thessalos' lifeless body in silence. They couldn't believe he killed a noble so easily. Then they look at each other in fear, knowing that the duel was already over. Yet Ferda killed Thessalos. That means he might kill them too, but who would dare stand against him now? Ferda calmly turned and walked towards them, saying, "Why is everyone so stiff? Is it because of Thessalos' vulture? Don't worry about it at all. He deserves to die. Leaving him alive would have only saddened the Grand Duke in the future." Count Ulvera is confused on how would Thessalos do that in the future. He reasons that this is the first time Ferda met Thessalos in this life. However, Ferda replies, Grand Duke Valdrova wishes for humans to be happy. A merciful Grand Duke who, despite being a dragon, fights for humanity every day. Thessalos' vulture went directly against that wish, though it's hard to show you since it's something that happens in the distant future from now. The nobles are shocked at this madman for ending someone who he believes would do something in the future without proof. Ferda reassured the others that he doesn't care about the rest of them for now. Later, as the carriage travels at high speed down the dirt road, the wheels constantly kept rolling on rocks, causing the carriage to tumble throughout the rough journey. Inside the carriage, Ferda hunches his body and holds his head in immense frustration, letting out a groan of pure suffering from the motion. He complains with great dizziness that his mind is spinning and that he is feeling extremely sick at the moment inside. He reflects that his mana was completely depleted after performing that precise mana shot against his opponent earlier. To make matters worse, he suffers from severe nausea caused by the bumpy ride as well. He deeply misses the mana cards, but it's too bad they haven't been invented yet in this era. Meanwhile, Ruri sarcastically comments, with a gleam in her eyes, that he was brilliant to eliminate the Duchess's most loyal lord on their very first meeting together. Ferda asks if she is talking about Thessalos, and the servant confirms that despite appearances, he was indeed very loyal to her master in truth. Ferda gets a bit worried learning this, and decides to ask how much the lord was truly honest and clean man in reality. Ruri explains, saying he was reasonably clean and took just enough bribes to survive. In the Far East, that kind of mediocrity is considered the best among nobles. The other lords are too busy lining their own pockets, even on the front lines where people are dying every day. Ferda realizes the lords here are a total mess indeed. He then tells her that the engagement ceremony will proceed as planned, because he had a perfectly valid reason to kill Thessalos' vulture that day. Ferda leans against the seat thoughtfully, and stared at the sack Ruri is carrying along the ride beside her. If Ferda's memory serves him right, Thessalos is committing a grave crime, even as they speak at this moment. Later, upon arriving at Thessalos' castle, the chief butler bows with respect and welcomes the Duchess's envoys inside. The butler informs them that their master is out, but Ferda nonchalantly replies that the lord is actually dead already. Without wasting time, Ruri throws the heavy sack directly into the confused butler's arms, telling him to hold on to that for now carefully. She casually orders him to hang the contents of the sack in a highly visible spot on the castle gates for everyone. The butler opens the sack and falls into absolute panic upon horrifiedly recognizing that the head inside belongs to his master without doubt. Ignoring the servant's screams of terror, Ferda and Ruri invade Thessalos' luxurious room in search of secret clues and evidence. Ruri warns that he needs to find proof of corruption, but Ferda reminds her that she herself helped him by taking the head from the corpse for him earlier. She threatens to take the head back and cancel the engagement, but Ferda says he just found a secret passage under the bed instead. He runs his hands across the wooden floor, searching for some hidden mechanism capable of opening the secret entrance below them. Seeing him taking too long, Ruri approaches authoritatively and tells him to step away from there immediately at once. She raised her fist and smashed through the secret passage, creating a perfect entrance with one strike. She nonchalantly tells him that the passage is now open and ready for them to enter right away. The two begin to descend step by step down a dark and cold stone staircase that leads directly to the basement below the castle. They both cover their noses, disgusted by the unbearable smell of blood and rot that invades the entire underground environment around them. They come across a secret laboratory packed with tangled corpses of humans and monsters everywhere. These traces of desecrating life and researching monsters can only mean a demon follower, those who abandon their humanity in their thirst for demonic power and knowledge. Among them, Thessalos Vulture was a warlock and a necromancer as well. Ruri observed the corpses, noting that it's a soldier from this territory in particular. It looks like the organs of the dead soldiers and monsters have been stitched together into one another. Ruri is overcome by an overwhelming rage upon realizing that Psychopath was practically begging to be finished by them from the beginning. She angrily concludes that humans are not to be trusted, but admits his betrayal fully justifies the execution of that noble in the end. However, she looks suspiciously at Ferda and asks how he already knew about the existence of a place as secret as that one in advance. Without answering, Ferda focuses on the papers and triumphantly whispers that he finally found what he wanted all along. The document reveals Thessalos' nameless masterpiece, the method for infinite mana cultivation itself. In his past life, Thessalos had explained that monsters produce mana constantly inside their bodies. However, it is too corrupt and unstable to ever be used by humans. But if they manage to artificially replicate that biological capacity to generate continuous mana, it would be possible to extract pure mana infinitely, completely surpassing all limits imposed by magic circles forever. Ferda had congratulated his incredible achievement and asked what he plans to do with it afterward. Thessalos laughed wickedly, revealing that he plans to use an army of the undead to destroy the nobles who banished him to the dragon's lands in revenge. Thessalos celebrated that he would soon become an archmage at last. Hearing all this, Ferda muttered that he intended to use that same valuable technique to fulfill his own revenge in the past as well. And so Ferda betrayed his benefactor and stole his research for himself. Now in the present, it has fallen into Ferda's hands once again by fate. The nameless mana cultivation method allowed his past self to reach the 8th circle faster than anyone else alive. If Ferda studies this, he can reach the 8th circle several times faster than normal. Ruri then snapped him out, saying, "Seeing you covet such a thing, you really are human after all deep down. The research is complete, and the researcher is dead. No one would ever know if you stole it from here. It's the ultimate chance to grow stronger that humans crave above everything." Ruri ironically congratulates him, but completely surprising the maid. Ferda holds out the manuscript and firmly refuses the idea of keeping it for himself. He places the sheets into her hands and orders her to destroy absolutely everything in the laboratory without exception. Ruri is in shock and asks if he is serious, unable to understand how a mage wouldn't covet such knowledge at all. He admits the research could revolutionize the world of magic, but questions what good all of that would be in the end. In the end, Ferda prefers to destroy the technique by its roots rather than let himself be seduced by power and end up bringing sadness to the Grand Duchess in the future once again. He looks into Ruri's eyes and firmly asks if she can burn all those down for him. Ruri stares at the precious documents in silence for a brief moment and decisively responds that the request will not be difficult at all for her to fulfill right now. Swiftly, intense blue flames begin to sprout from her hand, consuming the forbidden paper immediately before them. The fire spreads furiously throughout the entire place, incinerating every piece of research and the mutilated bodies without mercy. Seeing this, Ferda inwardly says, "Every magic reflects the emotions of its caster, and the caster's very essence becomes stained by that magic over time." Just as Thessalos hated the Empire, his magic harbored that hatred, and the hate-filled dark magic consumed him completely. Thessalos was also a possessor of a red circle, harboring a deep hatred and inferiority complex, no less than my past self, a man who shared my anger and hatred exactly. If I inherit his magic, I will once again be consumed by uncontrollable emotions, so I must cast it aside, along with my past self, who had to force himself to hate just to survive back then. Holding his beating chest, Ferda observes the magnificent blue flames and comments that everything is burning very well indeed. Ruri stares at him, finding him an unpredictable psychopath and a masochist to boot as well. He's a creepy, pervy human to keep by her master's side, but Ruri sighed and says it's better to leave this musty place, as it would be rude to reek of blood before his engagement ceremony with her master tomorrow. Finally, the day of the engagement ceremony arrived at last. Inside Archduke Valdrova's castle, Ruri and Ferda walked toward the ceremony venue together. Ruri asked whether he had finished writing the vow for the engagement ceremony already. Dressed in an elegant suit, Ferda held up his written vow and confidently affirmed that he had finished it. However, he remarked that it was rather romantic for the Archduke to hold a ceremony where both partners personally wrote vows for each other themselves. Ruri let out a sigh of frustration. That's just the polite way of putting it. To think the symbol of power is having her engagement ceremony in a place worse than a stable. Ugh, my master's dignity is suffering. Seeing her concern, Ferda thought to himself, Ruri looks troubled. Even if she isn't particularly excited about this engagement, she still wants Valdrova to be happy above all. It's a little sad watching her struggle with such conflicting feelings inside. Noticing him staring at her, Ruri crossed her arms and angrily questioned him, warning him not to wrinkle the formal clothes she had worked so hard to stitch by hand. Ferda remained silent, deciding to let her vent her frustration for now. Then he asked, come to think of it, things have been quiet since the last summons as well. What's the current state of the Archduchy right now? Starting with the lords, none of them looked capable of managing the front lines properly. Ruri replied that his judgment was correct indeed. She explained that things had been manageable at first when the lords were given autonomy, but without anyone keeping an eye on them, they had all become busy lining their own pockets instead. They were suppressing the citizens' complaints through military force, so a massive uprising could break out at any moment now. Hearing this, Ferda replied that the situation was serious indeed. But wouldn't it be solved if the Archduke stepped in personally right now? With just one word from her, they'd all be crawling on the ground, begging for forgiveness before her. Standing beside the entrance to Valdrova's isolation room, Ruri hesitantly replied that he would understand soon enough why she refused to interfere personally. Ferda was left confused by the vague statement for now. As they entered, Ruri lit numerous candles around the room. At the center of the room rested the ceremonial drink that the couple was supposed to consume to seal their marriage together. Ruri instructed Ferda to wait outside before slightly opening the inner gate and stepping inside alone. The instant she did, Ferda felt an overwhelming pressure from within. It felt as though the air leaking through that doorway alone was crushing his entire body beneath its weight. As Valdrova peeked out in her dragon form, extending only one claw beyond the doorway, her ominous aura made Ferda question whether someone like him was truly worthy of standing before her. Standing in the center, Ruri began the ceremony with solemn words. Today, mortality and immortality become one, forging a golden thread that neither the authority of the heavens nor the passage of time can sever. The mortal shall become one by escaping the unknown and washing away their fear. As Ruri poured the ritual drink into the bowl, Ferda drank it without hesitation. Instantly, he felt different, realizing this was no ordinary liquor. The dragon's overwhelming aura slowly began to fade under its effects. Ruri poured another serving and continued, the immortal shall become one by erasing the futility of an endless flow. Valdrova reached out with her trembling claws and attempted to lift the bowl, but to everyone's surprise, she accidentally dropped it, spilling the drink everywhere. Ruri remained silent for a moment before deciding to restart the ceremony from the beginning once again. A while later, Ferda was feeling extremely lightheaded from the wine. There had been so many retries that he had lost count, wondering just how many more times he would have to keep drinking. It was his first time experiencing something like this in his life, but this had gone way too far. At this rate, he might actually be in trouble before it ends. Meanwhile, Valdrova dropped the bowl once again. This time, Ruri finally snapped in frustration. She excused Ferda for a moment before heading inside to have a gentle chat with her master. Ferda jolted in surprise as Ruri's furious shouting echoed throughout the room. Just what do you think you're doing, master? You were the one who threw a tantrum and insisted on marrying a mortal in the first place. So what did this loyal servant do? I endured it all this time. But hiding away while your fiancé is sitting right outside? What does that make your fiancé look like? Go out there proudly and welcome your fiancé. And if you spill the engagement wine one more time, I won't overlook it again. A moment later, Ruri finally stepped out of Valdrova's room and found Ferda lying on the ground, still suffering from the effects of Ruri's dragon roar. Completely composed, she asked whether he had heard that just now. Ferda weakly nodded, saying that the roar had been on the same level as a dragon's breath. Ruri awkwardly chuckled that it couldn't be helped if they want the ceremony to proceed smoothly, because her master is afraid of humans. This surprised Ferda quite deeply. Ruri explained that Lady Valdrova was reluctant to interact with humans. That was why she never left her lair, unless she was hunting monsters outside her territory. Ferda couldn't believe that the great Valdrova had a weakness like that. Anyway, he asked when they were supposed to continue the engagement ceremony. Right then, Valdrova slightly opened the door and finally walked toward the ceremonial table in her human form. However, she was wearing armor for her own wedding ceremony. As she sat opposite Ferda, he felt a little disappointed that she had covered her face. After all, he had heard that a dragon's polymorphed form was breathtakingly beautiful. But instead, she looked more like someone marching straight onto a battlefield for war. Ruri resumed the engagement ceremony once more. The mortal shall become one by escaping the unknown and washing away their fear. The immortal shall become one by erasing the futility of an endless flow. As Ruri finished pouring the ritual drink, Ferda perked up as Valdrova reached for her helmet. She partially removed it, revealing her soft lips as her silky hair flowed naturally. Even though only half of her face was visible, Ferda was completely stunned by her beauty before him. She gracefully lifted the bowl and drank from it. After finishing, she let out a small sound. Ferda found himself completely captivated by her beauty. He wondered if he had drunk too much of the engagement wine because the primal fear he had felt earlier had completely disappeared. He was amazed that she had gone through all of this for an ordinary human like him without complaint. Ruri then moved on to the next phase of the ceremony, where each of them would recite the vows they had written. Ferda pulled his vow from inside his suit. He thought the words he had written were meaningless now that he had returned to the past. Even so, he decided to read them aloud with sincerity. Looking straight into the eyes of his soon-to-be wife, he began to recite, "You do not know me well, but I know you. You gave me your heart, and through that heart I came to know everything about you. I watched you be betrayed and falsely accused time and time again. Yet despite it all, I also saw you carry out your duties with unwavering dignity. You embraced even those who hated you for no reason, and your refusal to abandon what you wished to love is what set me back on the right path. Therefore, I swear here and now, just as you gave me your heart, this time I will offer my heart to you, my sovereign, my everything." Once Ferda finished reciting his vow, he told her that he had one more thing to say that wasn't written in it at all. "It is an absolute honor to be engaged to such a beautiful woman as you." Those unexpected words caught Valdrova by surprise. Ruri then instructed Valdrova to recite the vow she had written. However, she didn't respond. Instead, Valdrova suddenly stood up. Without saying a single word, she turned around, walked back into her room, and shut the door behind her, leaving both Ferda and Ruri completely confused. To Ferda's surprise, however, Ruri looked delighted. She immediately ordered him to leave, declaring that the engagement ceremony had been successfully completed. Ferda remained silent. Ruri called his name once again. After a brief pause, he suddenly asked whether it would be all right if he remained in seclusion for about 3 days, leaving Ruri surprised by the unexpected request. She assumed he was completely heartbroken. Ruri then entered Valdrova's room, praising her master's performance that I expected of my master. To strike such a devastating blow against that arrogant bastard, you truly possess the noble grace of a dragon. You really had a plan from the very beginning. Master, that I was completely deceived by that hit-and-run tactic. Even I never saw it coming. With this, the initiative remains entirely in your hands." However, her master remained silent. Documents were scattered all over the room, as if they had been thrown everywhere. Completely confused, Ruri asked whether that hadn't been her intention, that wasn't this engagement ceremony something she had been looking forward to so much? We then see Valdrova in her dragon form, covering her face with both hands in embarrassment after making a complete mess of her room because she had become so flustered. Valdrova quietly admitted that she had wanted to read her own wedding vows as the one welcoming her partner. However, when Ruri asked why she had not done so, Valdrova confessed that she had lacked the confidence. She now crashed out, saying, "I didn't have the courage to look him in the eyes and say it. Those sharp eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. That gentle voice. Looking at him, my mind went completely blank." Watching her master act this way left Ruri speechless as well. Then she sighed, saying, "Master, I apologize for bringing this up on such a joyous day, but at times like this, you must prepare yourself for disappointment." Valdrova is confused, and Ruri explains, saying, "Lord Ferda is now your official fiancé, so he will govern the East on your behalf. And humans tend to change once they gain power, just like the third prince did." As Valdrova remained silent, Ruri bowed, saying, "Forgive me for bringing up a decades-old memory, great ruler, but it is the best advice I can offer." However, Valdrova replies, "No, I understand your concern. Mortals are destined to fade away eventually. It is best to bury these fluttering feelings." Meanwhile, Ferda sat alone in his room after the engagement ceremony. Even now it still felt unreal. He had truly become engaged to Valdrova that in his previous life, hatred and anger had consumed him so completely that he had never experienced emotions like these. But this time, everything was different. Ever since meeting her, he could not stop replaying those moments in his mind. His red circle had gone completely berserk, and he still could not understand the strange feeling that was driving it. Although an uncontrollable circle could eventually destroy its caster, Ferda knew that if he could control it properly, it could become an opportunity for growth. He had already reached the peak once in his previous life. Returning there would not be difficult. A circle required two things, mana and mental fortitude. As a first circle mage, his current mana capacity was still severely limited. However, his mind had once reached the level of an archmage. Using that advantage, Ferda carefully controlled every bit of his raging mana without wasting even a single drop. He compressed it, layer by layer, and successfully forged his second circle that in only 3 days. Ferda had advanced to the second circle, taking another step closer to Valdrova. Not long afterward, Ferda finally ended his seclusion. Ruri gasped in surprise when she sensed his new power, that he had reached the second circle in only 3 days. She had noticed his room remained locked during that time, and wondered if red circle mages normally advanced at such an unbelievable speed. Ferda simply explained, every mage grows at a different pace. However, deep inside, he reflected on the hidden side effect of the red circle. Each new circle required an even stronger emotional stimulus, and the strongest emotion engraved into the circle would gradually become part of the personality. His own circle had originally awakened through overwhelming hatred. That was why, even after his revenge was complete, he had continued searching for things to hate. As they continued walking, Ruri led Ferda to the ruler's office, where he would now perform his duties. Although he would only serve as the Grand Duke's representative, the office had already been fully prepared for him. Ferda immediately noticed something. Every detail had been arranged with care. Even within a dragon's fortress, everything reflected Valdrova's consideration for her fiancé. Taking his seat, Ferda officially began his first duty as the Grand Duke's regent. He quickly realized that Valdrova's territory had been heavily neglected due to the responsibilities she carried. However, after displaying Thessalos's head and exposing his crimes, the surrounding lords had become extremely cautious around him. With Ruri's assistance, managing the territory became far easier. His first decision was to send letters to every lord he had previously encountered. Ruri explained, "These letters will serve as your first official greeting as the Grand Duke's representative." After taking office, Ferda officially informed the nobles that he would now oversee the internal affairs of the territory as the regent. He requested that anyone who opposed his decision simply remain silent, believing that their silence would be a sign of mutual respect. With the nobles' situation settled, Ferda turned his attention toward another major issue: monsters. Countless monsters continued to corrupt farmland simply by existing, while taking the lives of countless innocent people. Although Grand Duke Valdrova kept the disaster-class giant monsters under control, even she could not eliminate every smaller monster spread throughout the vast territory. Datio solved this problem. Ferda decided that his first priority would be recruiting capable individuals. When Ruri asked if he already had someone in mind, Ferda handed her a list containing several names. Ruri looked at the list and frowned. She grumbles, asking whether he's saying they should go find these candidates themselves, and more of all a scholar no one's heard of. Now together they traveled to the city of scholars, Asclia, to search for their first candidate. Ferda explained that it was natural for Ruri not to recognize the scholar because the man's talent had never been revealed to the world yet. Ruri narrowed her eyes, asking whether he just wrote this letter on the spot. Ferda calmly assured her that gathering this information had taken a very long time, but deep inside he remembered the truth. This list had once been his personal hit list, that in his previous life he had investigated their achievements, searching for reasons to hate them. He watched their every flaw, waiting for the perfect moment to use it against them. While eating potato chips with one hand, he had written their names down with the other, that he had been so consumed by hatred that he searched endlessly for new targets to blame. Looking back now, Ferda realized those obsessive thoughts had been nothing more than paranoia created by his anger. However, finding an unknown scholar in such a massive city would not be simple. While deciding what to do next, Ferda and Ruri sat beside a statue in the middle of the marketplace. A nearby fruit seller noticed them and shouted, "Hey there, young lord, and the cute little lady. How about a sweet snack for your troubles? Even the academy students love it." Hearing this, Ferda quickly approached him and asked, "Do many graduates come here usually?" The seller proudly explained that he had been running this stand for quite a while and had seen countless graduates pass through. Ferda then asked about the scholar known by the nickname Messi. Ruri immediately frowned at the strange nickname, wondering why anyone would bring such a messy person into their castle. The fruit seller recognized the nickname, but he cunningly held out his honey-glazed fruit skewers, saying he had been running a business, so his memory is a bit fussy since it's hard to remember everyone's faces. It's clear that this guy wants Ferda to buy his snacks for the information. So now Ferda asks how much are they, and the cheeky seller excitedly revealed that it's 5 copper coins for 3 skewers. Ferda took out his wallet to buy just 1 skewer, but Ruri quickly ordered all 3. Ferda, in surprise, stared at her. The seller happily handed her the honey fruit skewers, and Ruri's eyes sparkled upon the delicious sight. Meanwhile, Ferda comments that it's unexpected. He didn't think she'd like something like this. However, she insists that this is just a bribe to make sure his information is accurate. She happily enjoyed the sweet fruit with an unexpectedly childlike expression. Watching her innocent reaction completely surprised Ferda. He had assumed that, like himself, Ruri had long since buried her emotions. But now he realized she could still display such adorable and carefree expressions that he continued staring at her. Ruri mistakenly believed he wanted one of her skewers. She instinctively pulled them away, before awkwardly offering him one anyway. Ferda gently refused and told her to finish eating because the sky was already growing dark and it was time to head back. The next day at the Academy's graduation ceremony, the so-called messy scholar Bernal Marquis was greeted by a group of men. Bernal instantly became scared, asking how they got here. The group leader playfully held his shoulder, saying, "We're this close, so of course I had to come congratulate you. Seriously, what did you do to end up with a title like Messi? Anyway, congratulations on graduating, so now it's time to pay me back, right?" The men surrounding him began clenching their fists, and Bernal, sweating cold, nervously let a weak chuckle. It appears he owns a lot of debt. They now brought him to his room and began breaking items, demanding to know when this bastard will pay them back. Pushed to a corner, Bernal begs them for a little more time, but this made the man furious. He had waited years for him to graduate, and now he has the nerve to ask for even more time. Then he covered his nose as he saw a nasty dead creature on Bernal's desk that discussed. He asked what that animal carcass is. Bernal enthusiastically explained, saying, "That's not an animal. It's a monster. My research is about turning worthless monster corpses into mana stones and energy sources. Getting materials is difficult, but if I succeed, it'll be a huge breakthrough for the continent." However, the man scoffed, saying, "Spare me the excuses that I waited, because you said you were working on some groundbreaking research. But is any of this going to make money right now?" Bernal lowered his head and sheepishly admitted that there are too many variables, so it probably won't make money right now. The man then held his cigar, saying, "You really are a researcher who knows nothing about the real world. Give up this research, and I'll give you a chance to repay your debt." This piqued Bernal's curiosity, so the man held out his pocket knife, saying, "I hear weapons research pays well anywhere. Put that brilliant brain of yours to work making something profitable. Weren't you the top freshman in your class?" Hearing this proposal, Bernal nervously tries to avoid it, saying he already has another research, which might help them make money. But the man coldly threw his knife, almost striking Bernal's family jewels. The man coldly says, "I tried being nice, but you keep pushing your luck. Are you really in a position to be so picky?" Bernal trembled in fear, but he gathered his courage and shouted, "I absolutely cannot develop weapons. Please, just let me work on something else." However, the next moment, the man stomped Bernal's head onto the ground, as talking isn't getting through this scholar. Then they all began beating him up, furious that this fellow has the audacity to reject their proposals after taking so much loans. The leader yells at him to just die, since the loan sharks can't afford to lose a single coin. Meanwhile, Bernal covered his head and begged them to not hit his head. He pathetically wonders whether he's going to die right now. However, a sharp voice ordered them to stop. Burnell glanced up in surprise. Ferda elegantly entered the facility with his maid while saying, "I could hear the commotion from outside. Looks like I came to the right place. I have business with that man too." The men stopped beating Burnell, and the leader turned to Ferda saying, "Looking at you, you seem like some rich kid from out of town. Did this bastard borrow money from you too?" Ferda simply says no. So the man tells him to wait his turn because he's going to rough up Burnell just enough so he can still talk. However, Ferda replies that there's going to be a problem. What he needs isn't Burnell's mouth, but it's his brain. So Ferda suggests paying off his debt instead. This piqued the leader's curiosity and asked whether it will include the interest as well. In total, it will be a hefty 72 gold coins, and whether he even has that kind of money. Without wasting time, Ruri slammed a sack of gold coins on the desk, and the men were surprised by the absurd amount before them. The leader turned to Burnell and called him a lucky bastard for having someone this wealthy to back him. Then he went to take the gold coins, saying that the debt is cleared. However, Ruri firmly held his wrist, confusing him. Ferda coldly says that this deal isn't finished yet and asks, where does he think he's putting his hands? The man asks what's the meaning of this? Whether they are changing their own words now. Ferda explained, saying, "I clearly said I wanted his brain, but after he's been beaten this badly, I doubt it'll work properly. If you damage the merchandise, shouldn't you pay compensation?" Hearing Ferda call Burnell as a merchandise, the man asked what kind of logic is that. Ruri gripped his wrist harder, and the man groaned, asking how does a little girl have this much strength? This remark made Ruri furious, and she gripped him even harder, causing the man to scream his lungs off in pain. After ending that, Ruri wiped her hand, and Ferda tells her that he'll be counting on her. Ruri then used her dragon fear, causing the men to fall to their knees. The leader doesn't understand what's going on, that he can't move his body at all. This doesn't seem like magic. Then, what is this crushing pressure? It appears these guys don't know that Ruri is a dragon. Ferda stepped in front of the fallen leader and sternly says, "You have two choices, pay compensation for beating up Burnell, or take the exact same beating you gave him. Of course, since you loan sharks can't afford to lose a single coin, you'll pick the second option without hesitation, right? Therefore, you'll all take a proper beating to settle your debt." Ruri prepared her fists for some knuckle sandwiches, and so their screams echoed throughout the building as the beating began. After thoroughly teaching them a lesson, Ruri elegantly wiped her hands, while the men weakly made a run for it. It appears these guys got paid to take a beating. Now, since that's settled, Burnell thanks them for saving him, and that he doesn't know how he'll ever repay them, that he introduced himself as Burnell Marquis, the messy scholar. Adjusting his broken glasses, he asks what his name is. Our protagonist introduced himself as Ferda Valdrova. This shocked Burnell, and he quickly bowed down, apologizing for not recognizing the Grand Duke's husband. Ferda simply says, "It makes sense you wouldn't know, so don't worry about it. I came because I saw your research." Burnell, in surprise, asks whether he's really interested in his research. Ferda affirms, saying, "I heard you were researching ways to make use of monster corpses. The Far East has monsters in endless supply that if you come to Castle Valdrova, I will support your research without conditions. I will provide all the materials, fundings, and facilities you need." Hearing all these perks, Burnell is excited that his dreams are going to come true. Meanwhile, seeing Burnell's over-exaggerated reaction, Ruri asks whether this fellow is actually sane. Ferda now reveals what Burnell should give in return. He must produce weapons through his research. This instantly made Burnell's excitement vanish, as this is almost the same offer the loan sharks had offered earlier. Burnell nervously replies, "If that's the conditions, I can't accept. Weapons take people's lives and destroy peace, that I want this land to stay peaceful." Hearing this, Ferda says, "I see you value peace. However, those monsters you use on your research, do you know how many people a single monster kills in the Far East?" Burnell couldn't answer, and Ferda explained, saying, "Once every 3 days, the Grand Duke marches onto the front lines where colossal monsters gather. They are monsters capable of erasing a city like Esclea in an instant. And every single time, the Grand Duke risks her life fighting on the front lines. Those who know nothing of that reality simply stand upon her sacrifices and enjoy peace, as though nothing is wrong. That's why I need someone who can create weapons to help bring those monsters down. Only then can I lighten her burden. That is exactly why I want to hire you." The man everyone mocks, our chief researcher. Burnell perked up by the appointment letter Ferda is holding. However, he remains hesitant about forging weapons with his own hands. Ferda inwardly says Bernal Marquis, the messy scholar, the scholar who would one day usher in the age of magical engineering.